Hey everyone, my name is Marshall Mind, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my breakdown of the grappling system, and I'm going to show you guys how to deny all the basic transitions when you find yourself on your back. And after this, I'm going to show you guys how to block transitions when you're actually on top. Now, for those of you that didn't get the chance to play the beta, now the first thing you'll notice when you first grapple on the ground is that you can move independently of your opponent, and you don't have to wait on them to complete their transition before you can transition. It's a system that allows each player to begin their transitions at the same exact time, and this is by far the biggest change you'll notice on the ground and also when you play the actual game. Now, when you first play it, it's gonna feel like all you're doing is just constantly transitioning, and I also felt the same way in the first few days playing the beta. It was like that for a few reasons. One, you could transition whenever you wanted to, so why not? Number two, a lot of us still had bad habits from EA Sports UFC 1, and the hardest habit to shake off, in my opinion, is the habit of denying transitions preemptively. This is no longer possible in EA Sports UFC 2, and it is extremely important to remember this if you're going to be successful with your denials. You can only deny transitions on reaction. What this means is that you cannot preload your denies anymore. You can't say, you know what, I think he's gonna try to transition left, so let me deny left before he even attempts to transition. Now, even if you're right about that and he does attempt to transition to his left, you won't deny him successfully because you preloaded that deny. So keep that in mind as you play the game on the ground. And with that in mind, let's go through the ground positions from the bottom, and I'll show you guys how to deny these transitions. We're going to look at the guard, half guard, side control, mount, sprawl, backside, and back sit-in. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the guard. Just like in EA Sports UFC 1, to deny the transition to half guard from guard bottom, you hold R2 and hold or flick the right stick in whatever direction your opponent is going. So, if he wants to transition to the right side, you hold R2 and flick the stick to the right to deny it. If he wants to go to the left, you hold R2 and flick your right stick to the left to deny it. Now, posturing up from guard is an actual transition this time around, and it's a transition that you can actually deny. What direction does the fighter go when posturing up? He goes up. So you hold R2 and flick the right stick up to deny that. If he does manage to posture up from that position, he can transition right or left into half guard, or he can transition up, and that puts him in stacked guard. For the transition from postured up guard to half guard right, you hold R2 and flick the right stick to your right. If he wants to transition to the left into half guard, you hold R2 and flick your stick to the left. In theory, it's a very simple concept. The challenge here is to remember those tells, to remember the animation. That's where practice is going to come in. Now let's move on to half guard. From half guard, the fighter on top can either go to side control, they can go to mount, or posture up. And while postured up, he can also either go to side control or mount, or he can simply get up. If you played EA Sports UFC 1, then you know that to deny the transition to side control, you hold R2 and flick the stick to the left or direction of your side control, depending on where the camera angle is and depending on what side you are in. And to deny the transition to mount, you hold R2 and flick the stick to your right or in the direction of your mount. Now, things can get a bit tricky when your opponent postures up and then attempts to transition to mount or side control. And this is something new that was added to the game, so pay close attention to the animation. When the postured up fighter attempts to transition to side control, the knee that is on the inside, the knee that's locked up, points to whatever position side control is. And if the fighter attempts to transition to mount, the knee that is locked up points to the position of mount. It is definitely not an easy tell, and it's really gonna take a lot of practice to keep denying that consistently, but it can be done, and I was actually able to deny that somewhat consistently when I played the beta, so be sure to practice that when you get your hands on the game. Now let's move on to side control. From side control, the fighter on top can transition to mount, they can transition to north-south position, and for some fighters, they can transition into side saddle and crucifix. So, side control can be pretty tough for the bottom fighter, but if you know how to deny these transitions, things become way less complicated. Like in EA Sports UFC 1, to deny the transition to mount, you hold R2 and flick the right stick in the direction of the mount. And to deny the transition to north-south, you hold R2 and flick the stick in the opposite direction. Now, I'm not going to cover side saddle and crucifix right now, but these are the basics that you're going to need to know. Now, when it comes to mount, sometimes the fighter on top will try to transition from mount to side control. That is if he is more comfortable holding side control. A lot of people are. You can take advantage of this by denying that transition, and when you do, it improves your position and puts him in your half guard. So instead of going to side control, he goes to half guard, which is an improvement for you. So when a fighter is on top of you and trying to transition to your right, hold R2 and flick the stick to your right, and that puts him in half guard. Do the same if he's attempting to transition to your left. Next position I'm going to talk about is the sprawl position. When you're in sprawl bottom, the transitions work the same exact way. You block in whatever direction your opponent is transitioning to. If he's transitioning to the right, hold R2 and flick the right stick to your right. And if he's transitioning to the, god damn, this word transitioning, I've said that so many times. Anyways, if he's transitioning to the left, hold R2 and flick the stick to your left, okay? If he's in the backside position, he has two options. He can either transition to back mount or transition to sprawl. And with each transition, it's gonna be clear which direction he's attempting to go. If the fighter is attempting to go to sprawl position, then hold R2 and flick the right stick in the direction of the sprawl position. And if he's attempting to go to back mount, hold R2 and flick the right stick in the direction of back mount. Now the last position that I'm going to talk about, in my opinion, really deserves a whole video dedicated to it, because it can get pretty complicated when you factor in submissions as well. But I'm going to give you the basics. This position is a new position that has been added to the game, and it's called back sitting. In this position, it's important to remember that you're really in danger of two things when you're the guy on the bottom. Number one, the transition to mount. Number two, submissions. In this position, the one thing you'll notice is that one arm is over your shoulder and the other arm is under your shoulder. Every single transition to mount from this position will begin from the side with the arm under your fighter's shoulder. Now, where it gets tricky is remembering the animation, and my suggestion is this. Remember, the animation from back sitting to mount begins with a frantic hand fighting. And the second you see that frantic hand fighting motion going on, you'll know that the transition to mount is coming, and to deny that, you hold R2 and flick the right stick in the direction of the arm over your shoulder. That's how you deny it every single time. A, frantic hand fighting, remember that. And B, what you do, hold R2 and deny in the direction of the arm over your shoulder. Now, it's really gonna take some practice to get used to all these transitions, and it will take some time to memorize the animations and remember which direction to deny. But it's a beautiful system, and it's a system that is gonna get much easier the more time you put into the game, just like everything. This tutorial is a very basic tutorial, and there are a lot of things it does not cover. But at the very least, if you follow it, you won't be a fish out of water when you finally get your hands on the game. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a few players out there that got really good on the ground during the beta, and these guys will be very tough to grapple with. But at the very least, you'll be able to block more than a few transitions, and that is a step in the right direction. The next video that I'm going to make is going to cover the basic top positions, and after that, I'm going to give you guys a breakdown of the clinch. For those of you that still have access to the beta practice mode, my advice is to spend some time doing some skill challenges. Work on your grappling and get decent on it, because when this game comes out, I have a strong feeling that the ground game is going to be where true skill is demonstrated, and I really don't want any of you guys getting extremely frustrated and pissed off because you're getting completely dominated. So practice, and you're going to get good. I guarantee it. But that's pretty much it for this grappling breakdown. I hope it was informative, and if you have any questions about the ground game, leave them in the comment section below and I'll be sure to answer them. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in 2 days. Be safe.